On this episode of Grow, Nebraska farmers stand together concerned about a power grab by the EPA. We will have much more on the new coalition that's been formed, plus find out why flying drones on the farm may not be such a good idea just yet. And we head to Custer County to meet a multi-generational farm family. But our top story, egg groups across Nebraska join forces concerned about a new proposal by the EPA. NTV's Sarah Kirkley has our story.
After some recent Supreme Court rulings, the EPA is trying to clarify what waters are actually protected under the Clean Water Act. It's what could be considered other waters that has egg producers here in Nebraska concerned.
You can still see where water ran through Travis Rainforest Field after recent rains. The Hall County farmer worries a proposed EPA rule could soon protect that water, now dried up.
Potentially, you could lose an entire crop if you can't get in and get the things done that need to be done. I mean, it could be complete devastation.
They could just ignore it.
Egg leaders fear farmers and ranchers would need permits to spray or till their fields with sitting water, and there's no guarantee they'll get them. They say that could change the industry significantly.
If that changes, obviously the availability of food goes down, the cost of food goes up. Food's availability to the poor and the needy those are the people that are affected first. This would be land that the government should control.
The state's egg groups have joined to form Common Sense Nebraska to push back. They say these are the possible waterways that could be impacted under the new rule. But the EPA says no new types of water will be protected, and jurisdiction over some ditches may even be reduced. Still, the proposal says, quote, the agencies acknowledge that there may be more than one way to determine which waters are jurisdictional as other waters.
Part of the concern is that they've been really reluctant, as how we would characterize it, in really telling us what the specifics of the rules are.
And with recent proposals that threaten to change egg practices, farmers like Rainforest aren't taking any chances.
With requiring farmers to get a CDL to drive a tractor, to child labor laws. I mean, the only way we've really managed to stop those things is by pushing back and pushing back hard.
Common Sense Nebraska says this rule could also impact city and county governments or home builders. They plan to meet with those groups soon. The EPA is taking comments on the rule through October 20th, but comments on agriculture exemptions close in 6 days. We'll tell you how to comment. Just go to our website, nebraska.tv.
An environmental watchdog group says Nebraska is among the worst offenders when it comes to polluting our waterways. Environment America released a report that says 5 states, including Nebraska, account for 40% of the total amount of toxic discharge into U.S. waterways. The group says corporate agribusinesses are some of the worst offenders, especially meatpacking plants. Environment America supports tougher EPA oversight. Livestock producers devastated by tornadoes should be getting some federal help, but there's a concern they may be getting less money than they're supposed to. Nebraska senators and congressmen wrote to Ag Secretary Tom Vilsack, concerned about the way the government is calculating livestock disaster payments in northeast Nebraska. Now, thanks to the Farm Bill, the Livestock Indemnity Program will help, but producers discovered the USDA was using old numbers, undervaluing up to $330 a head. The law says producers should be paid at 75% of market value for their animals. Widespread rainfall has slowed the winter wheat harvest in Kansas. The National Agricultural Statistics Service says 40% of the wheat crop has now been cut, well behind the average of 66% by late June. But weeds in standing wheat were becoming such a big problem, some farmers are still spraying. The condition of wheat still in the field in Kansas continues to deteriorate, with 61% reported poor to very poor, only 12% good or excellent. American farmers have planted less corn than they have since 2010, but more soybeans than ever. In its annual acreage report, the USDA says farmers planted 91.6 million acres of corn. That's 4% less than last year, but still the 5th largest corn crop since 1944. Farmers did plant a record high 84.8 million acres of soybeans, up 11% from last year. Analysts expected farmers to devote more acreage to soybeans because of a drop in corn prices. Meanwhile, Kansas farmers have planted far less corn this spring, while also planting the second highest soybean acres on record. Soybean planting in Kansas estimated at 4.25 million acres, an 18% jump from last year. Corn growers planted slightly more than 4 million acres in Kansas this year. That's down 5%. Drought has taken a toll, with the latest forecast showing just 8.4 million acres of wheat expected to be harvested in Kansas. Knee high by the 4th of July. We'll just take a look at this. This is pretty typical corn around the area right about now. That old saying just doesn't seem to cut it anymore. Corn as tall as the farmer who grows it. Now that's a sign of a good crop around Independence Day. So maybe it's time to forget that old saying so many of us grew up with.
Well, a lot of times we hear knee high by the 4th of July, but that just doesn't seem to apply, hasn't really applied for years.
From Lexington to Hastings, farmers across Nebraska show how tall their corn really is. And it's sure not knee high, maybe chest high or shoulder high is a better way to describe it. You can attribute that to technology, with advancements in irrigation and more precision planting. And the biggest change is something you can't see: technology in the seed that makes corn more able to withstand drought and stress.
And that's attributed really to industry, the seed industry itself, and what they do on the genetic end.
As of this July 4th, the USDA says 70% of the Nebraska corn crop is in good to excellent condition. Where things are looking a little rough is where hail and storms have hit.
There's storm damage all along, which is really troublesome, but boy, we have had a lot of good rains in Nebraska, and the crops look great where it hasn't had storm damage.
But those same storms did bring plenty of rain.
We've been blessed with the rains this year, so have good moisture down deep in our profile, and that should help our irrigators this season.
Just as we still say someone sounds like a broken record, we'll probably keep saying knee high by the 4th of July, another phrase made obsolete by technology. If you're ready to ditch that phrase knee high by the 4th of July, you can always go back to the song "Oh What a Beautiful Morning," where it talks about corn as high as the elephant's eye. And in other ag news, drones can give you a bird's eye view of the farm, but experts say the law is not keeping up with technology. Some folks at the University of Nebraska estimate agriculture could account for 80% of the unmanned aircraft market. They see huge potential to scout on crops and check on livestock. But for all the positives, there's one big reason not to fly them.
It is currently illegal to fly unmanned aircraft systems or drones for commercial purposes or business purposes. They can be flown for hobby purposes, but FAA takes a pretty close look at hobby applications.
Engineers at the University of Nebraska say our airways are safe, but also complex, and the Federal Aviation Administration has safety in mind, so they're drafting rules to allow small drones.
Yes, and they're looking to make it legal to fly commercial systems for agricultural purposes. We just need a little bit of time. They need a little bit of time to bring them in safely.
They anticipate many uses on the farm, especially with advanced imaging sensors to look for weeds and stress in the crops. The first draft of the proposed rules are expected to be available this fall, allowing aircraft up to 55 pounds. Well, still to come, we've got our Farm Family of the Month. We'll head to Custer County to meet them. Up next, our Grow interview.